Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait one more minute for everybody to log in. There's still a couple people arriving. But if real quick, people want to just show their cameras, we can see everybody and just say hi real quick. We can be friendly. That's fine, Christina. All right, everybody. Welcome. My name is Chris Richards. I'm here with Todd Seabrook, who just waved. And we're going to be doing our presentation today about designing our virtual classroom, which is something that probably has a lot of interest and a lot more relevance now to adult programs than it did a year ago. So if you guys have any questions, we are going to have some time at the end of the presentation for that. We would really like you to be engaged and ask questions if you have any. So please make sure that if you're thinking of it, that you, like I said, write those down or something so you can ask them at the end of the session. Great. All right. So let's get the party started. Actually, I am going to really quickly turn off my camera while we talk. All right. So we're going to be talking about a few things today. We're going to take you through basically our whole process of how we designed our curriculum over the last year. That started with us just asking about what we need to do to respond to the pandemic after that closed our traditional classroom that we had. That goes from how we planned it, what that actually looked like getting it started, evaluating what was good about it, what was bad about it, and how we started to make some changes, and where we are now with our classroom and what it's going to look like as we continue to go forward. So that is quite a bit of ground to cover. So let's jump right in. So for those of you who are not familiar with our program, Seeds of Literacy ran a classroom, actually two classrooms in Cleveland, one on the east side and one on the west side of the city. And it was a pretty non-traditional classroom. Before the pandemic, we were focused on one-to-one tutoring. So most of our actual instruction was not in a classroom structure. It was with volunteer tutors providing direct instruction to students. And again, all those tutors were volunteers. The staff members that we have were called site coordinators, or are called site coordinators. And we're the ones that oversee classes. So what we're in charge of doing is doing assessments. That is the TABE, which I assume pretty much everybody's familiar with, assigning work, and getting people access to the materials that they need. So that's the jobs of the site coordinator. We wanted our tutors to be solely focused on working with the student. The site coordinator basically wants to take all of the things off the tutor's hands as we could possibly do. So we're the ones that are really overseeing what the student sees. From the student's perspective, when they came in, no two students had exactly the same work as they came in. This was a part of our program that a lot of people really responded to, the fact that every student gets a curriculum tailored to their specific skills. And so the way that that worked is we used a variety of assessments, the TABE, but also some assessments that we developed in-house to try and figure out what skills students had already mastered and what skills they needed. Based off of that, we assigned them work that was targeted specifically on those skills. And as we went along, we used reassessments and practice tests to gauge how well students were making progress. The other nice thing about our program is that we had a flexible schedule. So our program offered classes Monday through Thursday, in the morning at 9 o'clock to 11, in the afternoon from 1 to 3, in the evening from 6 to 8. So different times of the day, and students didn't have to make a regular schedule. They could come in when they needed it and work with the tutors that were available at that time. That meant no student ever, quote unquote, missed a class. They just picked up where they left off and allowed them to go at their own pace. So this model was pretty popular with our students. Here's some of the faces of people that we worked with over the years. And we were pretty proud of the fact that we think it worked pretty well. Each year we serve close to 1,000 students, sometimes a little above that number, sometimes a little below. But we like to say that we're a little bit larger than the average high school. In the 2018-2019 fiscal year, which is the last full year pre-pandemic we had 56 students who earned their high school equivalencies, which is pretty great. And many other students making progress towards that or achieving other goals, et cetera. And honestly, we were on pace to do even better the next year. Unfortunately, other events intervened. But an important part of our program is we talked to our students. We had a pretty good rapport with them, and we would ask students why they liked us, what kept them coming back, what kept them motivated. And they said a lot of different things. And here's just a summary of some of the main things that would come up all the time, that were different from other schools. Our tutors are patient. That comes out so much. People often said that first, the patience of the tutors. And people would say things like, it feels like home, which is an incredibly powerful thing when you think about the fact that a lot of our adult learners were folks that school hadn't been comfortable for them before. So the key thing that I noticed about all of these statements is that none of them are about the academics. It's all about the personal touch. It's all about caring about the people and that interpersonal relationship. So that was something that was really important about our program. Of course, it is no surprise to everybody that COVID-19 has had a big effect on us. So it was obviously in the news for much of the month of February. And the fact that we have a lot of students that have health issues, and also most of our volunteers are older. That is, a vast majority of our volunteers are over 60 years of age, which was in that high risk group. We were very concerned about that, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was safe. So we were hoping and praying that this would remain contained. It seems pretty naive now looking back on it, but we were really hoping that maybe it wouldn't strike too close to us. And at first it seemed like we might be getting a little bit lucky. There were no cases in the state of Ohio all throughout the month of February. And then on March 10th, 3 Ohioans were diagnosed, and all of them were from Cuyahoga County, which is where we are located. So that kind of hit us like a brick wall, and we had to act pretty quickly. Now, this is just a snapshot that I took of the intersection outside of our West Side campus. This is West 25th and Clark. It's one of the busiest intersections in Cleveland most days. And at the middle of the morning commute, it was completely dead. There was no cars, no traffic whatsoever. That's how quickly the pandemic shut everything down in the city of Cleveland. Sorry, I hit the back button. So we quickly had to assess what we were going to do. So on March 10th, that was when the first cases were announced. During that time, our president and CEO was out of town, but we were in communication with her via phone and email. And by March 12th, we made the decision to end in-person classes temporarily. When we first did this, we were really hoping that this would be over in a month or two. Our initial announcement was tied to the state of Ohio's announcement, which listed only 3 weeks of closures. But we did understand that it might take longer. And so we did ask students to come in and pick up work if they wanted to pick up some work, because we weren't sure how long it was going to last. So we gave them a special one-day window to come in person, get some work to hold them over. And as soon as that day was over, we started thinking about what can we do to continue providing services for our students? What can we do to still be giving them support? Again, we expected the coronavirus was going to last probably a couple of months. That seems, again, very naively short now, but at the time, again, the state of Ohio's guidance was 3 weeks. So we thought a couple months we were being safe and generous with that assessment. But we also understood that our students have a lot of barriers that are unique to them that other students in other situations don't face. And that all the challenges that normally make it difficult for adult learners were going to just be exacerbated and made worse by this pandemic. So that was something that we actually definitely were thinking about as we started this. So the first 2 days of the week that we were closed, when we didn't have classes anymore, we were brainstorming ideas. We know that we needed certain things. First of all, the solution had to be something that was accessible. That is, it has to be something that can be gotten through a variety of methods. A lot of our students don't have internet connections at home, or they don't have a traditional computer. So whatever solution we came up with, it was going to have to be something that would work not just on a computer or a PC. It would have to work on people's cell phones or on their tablets or something like that. Some other way of getting people in. It was also going to be something that did not take a lot of complicated steps to get started. It was going to have to be something that we could expand rapidly, so scalable. It was going to have to be reliable. Unfortunately, our students tend to have not a great amount of patience for things that don't work out well pretty quickly. And so we wanted something that was going to be consistent so that that X factor wasn't there. And we also knew it had to allow for some sort of personal interaction, because otherwise our students weren't likely to be engaged. And frankly, there's already things that exist that are very impersonal. There's distance learning tools like Aztec, Khan Academy, and stuff that already exist. So we need to have a more personal or personalized interaction than that. So we decided to break our approach into 2 different methods. The first approach was using the phone. This is called teletutor, or we called it teletutoring. And what this allowed us to do is reach anybody who didn't have access to a computer. As long as they could dial a phone number, they should be able to use teletutoring. There is a service that one of our staff members found that allowed people to sign up for conference call numbers for free. And what we did was we made schedules of what tutors were available on what days, and we could give the students that phone number and the access code for that conference call number, and they could dial in and talk to tutors. So this required students, though, to be calling in at the same time, and this is the right day, that the tutor that they wanted to work with was logged in. But we liked this option a lot because, again, it required no computer skills whatsoever. All you had to do was dial in on your phone. The other option would allow a little bit more of a personal touch, and that was video tutoring. Initially, we decided to use GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting had some nice controls in it that we liked, so we tried using that at first. And the idea was that we would have tutors schedule what topics they were going to teach. Students could then go online, see what topics tutors were going to be working on, and then students could join the sessions of the things that they wanted to look at. A good feature of GoToMeeting was it made it very easy to record sessions and archive them for later. And so we could be recording every single one of these sessions and build up a nice archive for people who missed a topic that they really wanted to see. So this was something that we were very excited about as well. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should mention the other thing, part of the reason we chose GoToMeeting also is that it was accessible on every platform, phones, tablets, computers, everything could access that with just a couple of clicks. So we knew that this was going to be pretty hard to get off the ground, but we had a huge amount of tutors available as well. Seeds of Literacy normally has about 200 volunteer tutors. That's 200 people who are willing to help students and are interested in doing so. So we put out a call to all of those tutors, asking them what they felt comfortable doing, explaining the basics of these 2 methods. We got a response from 65 people who were interested in teletutoring, and 40 people were interested in doing video tutoring. So obviously we couldn't get this started just throwing everybody to the wolves, so we offered a lot of trainings to make sure that everybody knew what we were trying to do and what the ideas were. It allowed a lot of tutors to ask questions. And a lot of these trainings were done in the medium that they were volunteering in. That is, the video tutors were getting their training through the video app GoToMeeting that we were going to use. And the teletutors were being trained over the phone using the conference call line so that they could experience what the students would feel like logging in and get comfortable with the platform. We also started offering new student orientations again after a little while, using GoToMeeting as a way to recruit new students. Students still kept wanting to sign up for us even after the physical classroom was closed. So pretty quickly, what we saw is that the tutors who came to these trainings mostly followed through. They were very active, and that was really encouraging. Most of the tutors wanted to be helpful, and because a lot of them are retired, they wanted something to fill the time as well. Students, on the other hand, were a little bit tougher. The student opinions were varied. First off, a lot of students simply believed that the pandemic was going to go by very quickly, especially when they heard the state guidance that we had parroted that said at least April 6th. Recruiting people for the first couple of weeks was very difficult because students said, oh, you're just going to be open in a week or two. I'm just going to wait for that. Or I'll just wait for classes to start over again. And the reality is we knew it was probably going to be longer. And the longer it went, we knew the longer it was going to continue. But students were slower to pick up or slower to accept that reality. The other big issue was technological barriers. I'm sorry, I hit the button. Sorry. Technological barriers. The same barriers that students were facing already about lack of internet access or lack of comfort using a computer continued to be issues. So we actually found that a lot of students really, even though we thought GoToMeeting was pretty easy to get into and was pretty accessible, a lot of people had trouble logging in. A lot of people had trouble maintaining a connection. People that accessed it on their phones, sometimes they'd be in places that didn't have the best reception, so they would get garbled or only partial of what they were intending to get. The phones also provided technological barriers that we just did not expect, with students being able to access the schedule of who was available and all of that. So when we asked ourselves, how is this going? The results in reality were mixed. Teletutoring managed to reach 149 students, which we were thrilled with that number. I mean, obviously we wanted to reach as many people as possible. 149, I think, was pretty darn good. Most of the students who logged in to teletutoring logged in for multiple sessions, which again was great. We wanted people to be continuing to use our services, and that seemed to be something that teletutoring enabled pretty well. However, there were some areas where teletutoring was not the best fit. A huge amount of our students are focused on math, and it's really, really hard to tutor math over the telephone, as it turns out. So this was a struggle for both tutors and students to adjust to. How do we work on these subjects when we can't see what the other person is doing? And realistically, teletutoring was logistically difficult and time consuming. Getting students the numbers, getting students the codes, making sure that they were calling in at the same times. It took up just a huge amount of staff hours, and again, was a lot more difficult than we expected it to be. And there was another problem, was that students were often very confused by the phone number passcode system. That is, students would type in the wrong access code, or they would type in a phone number and access code for two different people that wouldn't match, or they wouldn't remember the access code. And so by the end, we were actually having students just call into our main number, and then we were transferring them into the waiting room, or into the conference call line, I should say, of the tutors who they wanted to work with, which again, logistically difficult, time consuming for staff. On the video tutoring side, we reached 82 students. And actually at first, what we noticed was that there was a decent amount of interest, but pretty quickly it became obvious that students were avoiding coming to certain tutors sessions. They liked coming to some tutor sessions more than others. And the attendance was not nearly as consistent as the teletutoring was. It was very erratic. Even when we would go out of our way to schedule one-on-one sessions between a student and a tutor, there were many times where students missed those one-on-one sessions. The other thing was that we had a lot of tutors who were struggling. Sorry, it's a little loud here. The street outside our building is pretty loud. But many tutors struggled to log into the right meeting that they were supposed to be there for. That is, the tutors were having issues with technology. For years, we've been trying to get digital literacy as part of our curriculum. And part of the issue was that a lot of our tutors don't feel comfortable teaching technology either. And so that same problem carried over here, where tutors were all logging in from different systems, PCs, Macs, tablets, etc. And they kept finding new ways for there to be problems. And so I'm sure Todd will talk about it a little bit as well, but people kept finding new ways to break things, new ways to have trouble getting into the meeting. And so that was something that we really struggled with the video tutoring. So taking an assessment of our initial efforts, the teletutoring was most successful when tutors and students were paired consistently. That is, the same pair worked together over and over again. We saw a lot of interest with video tutoring early on, but that seemed to peter out pretty quickly, again, based off of a couple things, but one of them being the inconsistent qualities of lessons. The presentations were very different tutor to tutor, some tutors being very comfortable with the format, other tutors being very uncomfortable with the format, and students tended to have very little patience for tutors who didn't seem to at least be basically competent with the platform. We were recording all of these sessions, but what we found is that when we posted these on YouTube, the longer lessons were watched far less often than the shorter ones. So what do we draw from that? The reality is that in both groups, what we noticed was participation was better when people were logging into work with specific tutors with whom they had a personal connection, which ties back to the reason our original classroom worked better in the first place, was that we were building those personal one-to-one connections with students and tutors. So even in the digital domain, that personal connection remains more important than the academics. So we knew that we had to transition, and we knew that what we were doing wasn't doing exactly what we wanted. So we started to do a phase 2 approach. And what we wanted to do was launch a better classroom. So our first attempt, we knew we had put together very, very quickly. And we based it off of what worked under our usual circumstances, our normal conditions. We knew a lot about our students, but we've never experienced the pandemic before. So normal conditions don't really exist in the year 2020, as the last week even has continued to show us. So what we had to do was take what we learned over those first few months and use that to improve our processes and procedures, build a better version of what we wanted to do. So doing that, we had to have a clear idea of the things that didn't work. What is it that we wanted to avoid? So the first thing was that students were not interested in having scheduled topics on video lessons. They would come for a few topics, but avoided a lot of others like the play. Also, students really had trouble remembering phone numbers and access codes, as I mentioned before. Something that we really didn't think would be that big of an issue ended up being a huge logistical hurdle. Our tutors oftentimes struggled to stick to the schedules, which means students would call in when they did call into the conference call line and find that the tutor wasn't there anymore. So without someone there kind of minding the store or keeping the tutors engaged, the tutors that called into those conference call lines felt kind of siloed off. They felt alone. There wasn't that sense of community like when they're in the classroom. And without that sense of community, without other tutors to talk to, without people to interact with, without seeing all the other things going on, it became harder for the tutors to stay motivated. It was also hard to allocate people effectively and efficiently because it was just so haphazard and split over these two completely different systems. And then the technology issues plagued students and tutors in kind. And that just continued to be a constant thorn in our sides, the technology issues. And people just struggled with trying to adapt to the new way of doing things. However, we also know that there were a lot of things that worked and worked very well. Obviously, the personal connections we've talked about already a few times, but that was the biggest thing that kept students coming back. Students want to have that connection. They form these really strong bonds with tutors, and we want to be able to do something that continues to allow that to grow. The other thing that was really amazing and kind of surprising was when we started offering orientations that were digital, we started getting students from outside the Cleveland area. We've had students now from Florida, New York, and Chicago all sign up for classes at Seeds of Literacy, which is pretty great. The other thing is that we've still been able to get students graduating. All of the test centers in Cuyahoga County closed down around the same time we did, but they all opened up again during the middle of the summer. And so what's really been amazing is since the testing centers have opened up again, we have been scheduling students for tests, they have been taking them, and they have been passing them again. So we are still graduating students, even though our classroom is still not open because of the pandemic. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Todd, who is the one who is actually running our virtual classroom now. And he's going to talk about how we're doing this now and how we're taking it forward.
Thank you, Chris. So we knew that we wanted to streamline this process because our two-pronged approach was splitting both the resources of Seeds and our tutors and students into different sections. So we wanted to make our virtual classroom as close to our regular classroom as possible, which meant we wanted to combine everything into one place, because in our classroom, everyone just shows up to our classroom at the appropriate class times. They can come to as many as they want. They can come to different ones when they want, and the same with our tutors. So we wanted to mimic that as closely as possible. So when we switched to Zoom, because we knew Zoom could, of course, do video, but you could also call into Zoom as well. And it will call into the same meeting room as the video conferencing. So we thought that was a good solution to having people that weren't comfortable or didn't have access to a camera or to didn't want to be on camera. If people only had a telephone access, that they could call in and still get the benefits of tutoring. We also knew we wanted to have we need to digitize our folders. We needed some way to keep track of the work that students were doing. Before this, during the summer, it was, we did it, but it was tricky. It was hard to keep track of who was doing what because everyone was so split off. And most of our time was really dedicated to just getting people together on tutoring and figuring out what their plan was, what their work was, how they're doing in it was almost secondary because all our time was dedicated just getting them into it. So we wanted to digitize our folders. We knew that was one thing that we needed to fix as well. We also needed curriculum to give to students since they couldn't come in as often or at all because of COVID. We knew that we had to make our physical paper packets of work. We needed to create them into PDFs to be able to email them out to people. So we had started this process at the beginning of summer. It actually been started a little earlier than that, but not fully. And then when COVID hit, we turned it into high gear. By the end of beginning of September, we had digitized almost our entire curriculum, which is about 13,000 packets, about 24,000 pages of curriculum had now been digitized in order to give out to students. The last thing we wanted to do in our new strategy was build a community in this platform. Remember, this was something, the personal connection to our that our students find when they come to Seeds is what drives them forward and helps them get their GEDs. So it was really hard to mimic that in a when we only had individual tutors off on a telephone line somewhere and someone had to call into them. And the same with a video. You watch a video but not really interact with the tutor, but you'd watch them perform a lesson instead of interacting with them. So we were losing some of that personal connection, and we wanted to build that into our next platform as well. All right, so we launched it. We launched our new Zoom classroom at the beginning of September. We sent out email after email to everyone, letting everyone know that this was going to happen and be ready for it. And when we finally launched it, I'll tell you, the approval from our tutors was resounding. They loved it. They're like, this is so much better. This is great. Everyone can come to the same place. This looks like our classroom just through a video conference line. It was consistent. It was stable. The ability to come whenever you wanted to, so you could schedule times. You could just pop into a classroom when you had time. This is amazing for both our tutors and our students who are able to do this. Of course, we always have the issue of technology. It didn't stop because we switched to Zoom. It only created new. Oh my gosh, what's going on? There we go. Okay, there you go. It only created like new issues. We had to learn Zoom inside out and backwards. And we had our tutors learning we gave lessons to our tutors on how to use the whiteboard, for instance, how to use the chat features, how to use the other various things that like sharing screens and things like that. It can really help. It's really useful in an educational setting. We had to teach our tutors how to use those things and teach our students when they came in. So just like when we launched our first COVID response, digitizing everything, our students were slow on the uptake on the Zoom classroom. We still had some of the same issues, the access issues where they don't have a computer still, they don't have the technology skills, and of course the continual ever-present life barriers that they are facing in their everyday lives prevented them from coming in at least as much as the tutors were available. So the way though this works, the virtual classroom now works is everyone logs into a Zoom at our class times. They are the same class times we had when we were in the classroom before COVID. There's 3 a day, Monday through Thursday, morning, afternoon, and evening, and you could just pop in at any of those times. We told our students just come in whenever you're available, because both for our students and tutors whose schedules often fluctuate and are not always consistent. When someone comes in, they pop in. Now you probably know that Zoom changed its waiting room policy so that when it got hacked, that you now have to come in through a waiting room and then be let in. That was not, when we started this, that was not the case, that everyone could come in and they just show up in our Zoom meeting immediately, which was convenient for us because we didn't have to let anyone in. We could just see everyone when they came in. That changed a little bit with Zoom. What are you gonna do? When they come in, they will see a site coordinator, usually myself, but also it could be Chris or some other site coordinators there to greet them, say hi. They will probably see a whole bunch of other tutors, sometimes some students there as well. And this is important. We discovered this is a good positivity to see that there's a more people there ready to work with them, and that this is once again building a community So it's not they're just like going off alone into pairs with some other person somewhere. It's they come in and they see a whole bunch of people together working towards a similar goal. It's a massive positive reinforcement for them. When they come in, a coordinator will ask them, usually it's me, ask them what they're working on. Usually it's either reading or math. More often than not, it's math. And I will pick a tutor and pair them off into a breakout room. I'll pick a tutor based on what the tutor skills are and what the student is working on particularly, and personalities, general site coordinating, things like that. I'll put them in a breakout room, which will have a little notification on their side that says you're going into a breakout room. And then those two can work one-on-one together uninterrupted by other people. Often I will hop in I will send them off to a breakout room, and then I'll hop in with them, and I will make sure that the tutor and the student both have work and they know what they're working on. They're working on the same thing. I will send a digitized version of the packet that the student has to the tutor in the chat function. I'll just send them a link because our entire curriculum is digitized now on a SharePoint file service. And make sure they get going, and then I'll come back to the main waiting room, and then they can work the rest of the session. At any point, they can request help. This often happens either, not just like technological help, but they finished a packet, or the tutor says this is too easy or too hard for the student, or they have a question about something. Whatever it is, they can request help, and I'll pop into that breakout room and help them. In our normal classroom, I would just, a site coordinator, we work walking around, and we'd be able to, they just flag us down, we go help them. And we wanted to be able to be interactive with these pairs as much as possible. So we tell our tutors that, like, call us in, it's fine. We are there to help. So if you have any questions about anything, just call us in and we'll talk to you. We also wanted to make sure we could track the progress of our students better. Now that we had more time on our hands, since we didn't have to be constantly calling students and getting them online, now it's much simpler. That's a much more streamlined process. We could now get into the higher level aspects of our job, which is tracking their progress, making plans, making sure they're on track and goals, things like that. And we did that through digital folders. Just watch this now. There we go. I want to show you, this is what our virtual folder looks like. It is just a Google Sheet. We created this. This is actually the third version that we created. We started with one and realized we could make it better, and then we realized we can make that one better too. This is what we have right now. This is just for a student. You'll see at the bottom that there are a bunch of sheet tabs. Those are for all the different students. We wrote a script. We wrote a script. I stole a script somewhere online and applied it to this sheet so it could alphabetize those tabs every time we open it. Now we can find any student very easily. This is in this particular student's tab, this folder, you'll notice that we can write down what they're working on. I write down who they're working on with. Helps me pair them up later if they come back, and they can be like, oh, you've worked with this tutor a lot. Let's keep it going with them, creating that personal connection. And also that we created drop-down menus for the class times, the day, and the date. Simple as that. So it's really easy to fill out. And this way you can quickly see their progress, the work they're on, what they have. So when they come in and they go to a breakout room, I can pull this right up and say, I see you're on Challenger 5 and this one, and I can give that to the tutor right in the chat. So it's very convenient. This is a major step forward in digitizing our classroom, since our classroom we have so many students that have an individualized learning plan that we have to we have to keep track of everyone's different skill sets. So it works better. Now, there are still some things that I don't think are probably ever going to go away, and that's technology. with both our tutors and students. Some of the same technical issues we had with round one of our virtual classroom are still today, and a whole bunch of new ones. I'll tell you, tablets especially. I don't know who made them, man, but they don't work the same as anything else. And so anyone that's working off a tablet, we always have a new crop of issues to deal with and try to troubleshoot on the spot. And we troubleshoot on the spot with both our tutors and students. We try to figure it out right there, and we get them going. And sometimes that takes like, a solid chunk of time that's out of that tutoring time. But you know what? We decided it's better to do that then and get it fixed and get them working with that technology immediately. And so that next time they come in, it won't be a problem. So we're trying to do this over and over again. Almost every class, there's some issue with technology. We work with our tutors especially because we want our tutors to have that to show our students the confidence with a computer so that they believe them in the rest of their tutoring. A tutor that is stumbling through their own technology does not always appear confident to our students, and our students read that. So we are giving, we do lessons with them. When they come in, we say we schedule times for them between classes to come in and show us like what problems are, or work with them, how to use the whiteboard and Zoom and things like that. We want them to be very comfortable so that they can work with our students as comfortably as possible. Of course, new programs have new quirks. As I said, the Zoom changed it on us where they now have a waiting room. So a site coordinator has to let everyone in to our classroom. Otherwise, they're in a limbo. They just wait in a blank space. It says waiting for someone to let you into the meeting. This is not that big of a problem, except when a site coordinator has to go into a breakout room to help a student tutor pair. When they're in a breakout room, they cannot see who's waiting in the waiting room. So it's only when they come out of the room that they can let someone in. We try not to have people waiting in that waiting room too long. The share screen in Zoom is, especially for tablets, is killer. It's a great tool for our tutors to use, especially when students don't have their own technological, don't have a packet in front of them, for instance. A tutor can share their screen and they can read straight off the screen. But making sure people know how to use share screen and know how to manipulate it is often difficult, to say the least. The great thing that happened though when we changed over here is that the site coordinators gained more control over how we paired people off. We had a lot of options, and so as you know, students and tutors all have different styles of learning, different styles of teachings, different personalities. And as site coordinators, we have learned those different quirks of different people, and we try to pair people off as best we can. We think the learning will be the best situation for everyone. The old way, we are very limited in who we had available at different times, and so that we didn't always get to find the best pairing. We just had to deal with what we had. This way, we definitely have more control, and we can definitely pick and choose who should go with who. And as Chris started this presentation, the biggest thing that Seeds has is a community and purpose. And that is everyone comes in, they see everyone, all the students see everyone and see everyone that they're not alone in this, that they have tutors, they have other students there. Everyone's like, this is an encouraging method. And we wanted to mimic that in virtually as closely as possible. And when people come into that virtual classroom, they are greeted with a sea of tutors' faces and everyone there waiting to help them. So I think that has gone a long way to seeing friendly faces again, especially in the days of COVID when we're all cooped up and we can't see anyone else. To see that everyone is still here and still ready to help them is important. is the reason that happens because we have consistent times and flexibility of students and tutors to come in on their schedules, which is what SEEDS is based off of. Come in when you can, whenever you can. We are not class-based, so you can skip a class, you can miss a class. Come in when you can, and we'll go from where you left off. That is being mimicked in this as well. You just come in and we'll start right up. So going forward, this virtual classroom, we have also learned that it's important to maintain contact with students. Students will often, just like in regular classroom, come in for 1 or 2 classes and then kind of fall off. And in order to prevent that, the more we call them and we reach out to them, we email them, we see what's going on in their life, and if there's any barriers we can remove to get them back in the classroom. Same thing for virtual classroom. People come in often, 1 or 2 classes, they seem to love it, and then they kind of fall off. And so it's our jobs. We have to make the calls, we got to make the emails, find out what's going on, find out if there's any barriers we don't know about, and try to solve those so we can get back to work. We also want to, it's important not only to do retention, but also to know their plans, a student's plan going forward. This is important in the classroom to know, their timeline, if they're working to get this, if they have a promotion they need to get, or if they're there for themselves, if there is no timeline, things like that. These things are important and we need to keep track of them. So the future of the VC of the virtual classroom remains on contact with our students, knowing where they're at in their lives, and knowing where they want to go with their educational progress. Now, it became apparent also that the virtual classroom has the power to expand our program a lot, exponentially, really. Right, as Chris said, we have students from multiple states joining us now, when before we were, brick and mortar store where you'd have to be able to get to our classroom. Now you can be anywhere. We have people in Florida. We just had someone from Michigan join us this week as well. And there's no reason why we couldn't have tutors, not just students, tutors from all over the country join us as well. So the possibilities of expansion are looking good for us. And we're pretty excited about it. So that is what our virtual classroom looks like. It's where we're at now. It's where we want to go going forward. I'm sure there's going to be more tweaks to it, but the 2.0 version is definitely better than what we had before.
And real quick, I just want to, I'd be remiss if Todd mentioned how important the retention is. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that very shortly after our session is over, there will be another session run by one of our coworkers, Kara Kraviak, talking a lot about what our session efforts look like, or our retention efforts look like. And I encourage anybody who's interested to listen to her about it, because she's basically a retention expert. So definitely, if you're interested in learning more about that topic, go see hers. In terms of questions, we've got a couple here that people have asked in the chat. One is from Lori, who wants to talk about how we do breakout room procedure. So she says, I can make rooms and assign people, but getting them back is difficult. And that's a really great issue. So the way that we actually have the breakout rooms working is that once we assign people to those, what we do is make sure that everything's working out okay. As Todd mentioned, he jumps into the breakout room himself. And then once they're going okay, we leave the breakout room and they don't have to come back to the main classroom. They can, but they don't have to. So basically the key things are set up for them to work in the breakout room by themselves. One of the ways that we're able to ensure that that works out okay is that we have a tutor log that tutors can fill out that's on a form on our website. And basically what they can do is they can log any important information that we need to know in that log, so they don't need to be popping in and out of the breakout rooms to let us know what's going on. They can just go in the breakout room, work with the student, log off Zoom, and tell us what happened that was important in that log.
Okay.
And we also check in often. We'll check in with how they, like the next time they log in, check in how they did, or next time I see a student or I chat, I send a tutor a message, be like, I want to talk about the progress of the student. Also the other way around, I will send away, I'll say, hey, student, don't leave when you guys are done. I want to talk to you about how it went with that tutor, things like that. So they don't have to come back. We go to them and talk about things like that.
Excellent.
Any other questions? That was an excellent one.
I think there was one about folders.
Yeah, so in the chat, Elizabeth asked, where do you keep the digital folders and how do students and tutors access them? So as Todd mentioned, those are used in Google Sheets. So it's an online spreadsheet that's absolutely free. If you aren't using Google Sheets, it's a fantastic way to share information with people. Todd, are you trying to get back to the thing? Oh, okay. Anyway, but yeah, Google Sheets is where those are located, and that allows you to share them with whoever you need to. But Todd, I don't believe the tutors have access to those, right?
Correct. We don't. Neither the students nor the tutors have access to this. This is so that we can keep track of progress. We just tell the tutors what to work on at that time. So often our students, if they work with us, especially if they work with a student long enough or for a while, they'll ask like what the plan is, or like if we like what is the student's story, so that we can give the best experience for them. But they, in general, tutors and students don't need to know what's in these. They just need to know the overall plan. And so these are mostly just for us.
Are there other questions?
I'd like to see this note from Elizabeth Robertson for the use Schoology for posting files and students. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. With the way all our curriculum, we made it into PDFs and then we posted it on Microsoft SharePoint. And when we either email work to students or we put it in the chat function for on the spot, pulling it up, we can just copy the link to that SharePoint. So what we're really sending is a link to someone, so they can click on that link and it will pop up and they can download the PDF from there, or just use the PDFs straight off the browser. But that's where we house our digital curriculum, is in Microsoft SharePoint, and we send links. That's how we share with links.
We try to keep people from having to pop out of Zoom or pop through other programs as much as possible. We have found if we can just get people in Zoom and using that correctly, that's a big hurdle in and of itself. And providing folks with the links directly through the chat, the links that Todd was just talking about, allows us to avoid having to send people to different programs. So that's why we've been doing it our way. There's certainly more than one way to run this, but we have found that that's been really effective, especially because people sometimes have a lot of trouble navigating from one program to another. We have a couple more minutes if there's any more questions.
That's a good question. Do students have extra practice available outside the tutoring sessions? How do they get it? We give them work, so they have work, like a packet of work to do if they want. Outside the tutoring sessions, we try to limit. I mean, we offer tutoring sessions three times a day, 4 days a week, and so trying to schedule people outside of that is extremely difficult, mostly because we have to be the hosts. We have to be on Zoom. So The short answer to that is we don't have tutoring available outside of our times, but we do give students plenty of work. We can give them all the work they ever want, and they can work on their own and get ready for a tutoring session in the next day or the next week or whatever. Go ahead, Chris.
I wanted to address the other question that Lori had about, are we doing all of this on phones? So Zoom works on a variety of platforms: computer, phone, tablet, etc. Tablets generally give us the most trouble, but that's actually mostly tutors using tablets that are having trouble, actually, not so much students. But it's accessible any way people can get into it. So you can actually call into a Zoom meeting too. You don't have to log in through a smartphone app. You can just dial a phone number. So we actually still have it so that students can call in to our main number and we'll transfer them into the Zoom meeting. And we have students and tutors. So sometimes the tutor will be on video and the student will be on a phone and talking over just a regular landline phone. Sometimes both people are talking on phones. Again, that makes math a little bit more difficult. But what's nice about having everybody come into the Zoom and then breakout rooms is that it doesn't matter what that combination is. No matter how people access it, we can pair them off.
So they're mostly interacting with voice. They're not, you're not sharing a lot of screens and visuals?
Oh, I mean, we're sharing, especially on the tutor end, the tutors are sharing a lot of screens. Actually, so when students log in on the smartphone app, a lot of times, like, the student will say, oh, well, I only have the packet in my email. And so we'll send the tutor the packet, and the tutor will download the packet, share the screen. And so they're both working off the tutor's screen. Obviously, if the student can only call in, that's not an option. But again, it's whatever the student's able to log into. So what's nice about it is it provides the flexibility for as much or as little as we can provide.
Yeah, we also have that flexibility is important. So we have a student could call in on their phone and they can work with a tutor who's on video, or we can have a student who's on video and a tutor who calls in on the phone, and they can still work together so that we can match up their abilities as possible, because that is often what's most important. And before, we just didn't have that flexibility.
We use Zoom too. It's just when our student is on a phone and we're on laptops, it just sometimes, I can't see you, or I can't see the screen, or what screen are you on? There's a lot of, you definitely lose some time to tech glitches that you mentioned. You acknowledged it, and it's just part of life.
Yeah. And I would actually strongly encourage your staff members, whoever you have, to get as comfortable as possible with the ins and outs of the platform and offer trainings periodically. Because what I have found is that we were able to nip a lot of the problems in the bud by having scheduled trainings for tutors when we transitioned. And we answered a lot of those questions before the actual classroom started. We have also a few times had people who were having trouble, again, using a tablet especially. And if they were able to make it up to our physical classroom, Todd or myself could help them troubleshoot. We would run a fake class and help them troubleshoot the problem together. And so that way, when the next class came, they could solve the problem on their own. So having staff who's comfortable helping people out when they have questions also makes this go a lot easier.
And we do have an IT person that helps out in that area. I work too with Lori. Hi, Lori.
Hey, Dee.
That kind of helps us
we're
along.
all good at using Zoom. It's just our students sometimes struggle.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I will say, even though our first classroom wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be in reaching everybody consistently, we did actually get a lot of really great lessons from that that we now have on our YouTube as a great resource for people that want to get a little bit more personalized sort of video content. So what's been nice about this is as we've transitioned to the current classroom, we're a lot more happy with where that's gone. But we've also been able to keep some of the benefits from what we learned during those first few months as well.
I think you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
All right, any other questions here before we go? All right, so I want to thank everybody for coming again to our session. We really appreciate having you all here. Hopefully, this gave you some useful information you can take to your own programs and help make your solutions work as best they can for your students. Again, I'll just also plug our coworker, Kara, is running a session in a few minutes if you want to go to hers. Like I said, she is a retention expert, so I'm sure she'd be glad to have you. She is amazing at getting students to come out of the woodwork that I never thought would be able to get on. So she's pretty great. Anyway, thank you very much, and y'all take care.